So, you want to master Camille and become just like the enemy Camille, dominating the lane and 1v9ing the game. Say no more. Welcome to our ultimate in-depth guide for Camille, the Steel Shadow. I'm too small, and Camille is one of my best champions, and I'm here to tell you every little thing about Camille to help you master her. I assure you there are a lot of important little details that you definitely don't know about, so if you want to be a true Camille master, make sure you're paying attention to the whole thing. Without further ado, let me start by explaining how Camille's abilities work. The passive, adaptive defenses. Attacking an enemy champion grants a shield equal to 20% of Camille's maximum health for 2 seconds. So the higher Camille's maximum health, the bigger the shield she gets. This shield only absorbs one type of damage, it depends on the highest type of damage the attacked target deals. Sometimes the passive grants a physical shield against AP champions in the early game, because they deal more physical damage by auto-attacking. Also the opposite can happen, granting a magic shield against AP tanks. This is very common against Malphite. And no, most of the time this is actually not a good thing, but it is what it is. This yellow bar indicates the passive cooldown. When it's ready it switches to red. And you can know what type of shield you will get by the symbol. It also changes with different skins, so don't be confused if you play with skin, the symbol color that matters. If the symbol is red you will get a physical shield, if it's blue you will get a magic shield. This shield is really strong, especially in the early game, so whenever the passive is available play more aggressive, because you're gonna win most early game trades. Also, the higher Camille's level, the faster this passive recharges. The first ability, Precision Protocol, empowers the next basic attack to deal more damage and grants 25% movement speed for 1.5 seconds. And 1.6 seconds after the first attack, it automatically empowers another basic attack dealing 40% of its damage as true damage. This true damage percentage increases with Camille's level, not with the ability's level, so at level 5 it deals 60%, at level 9 80%, and at level 13 100%. In case if you don't know, true damage ignores all armor stats and any damage reduction effects like exhaust and gargoyle, so hitting the second empowered attack while using gargoyle or being exhausted against a target with a lot of armor, the damage wouldn't reduce at all. This is why Camille in the late game hurts so much no matter what. Notice both empowered attacks have a slightly longer range than the normal auto attack. Upgrading this ability increases its damage and lowers the cooldown. Also, this ability is an auto attack reset, meaning you can hit 2 autos back to back like this, so you should always hit 1 auto attack before it, to maximize your damage output. The second ability, Tactical Sweep, slices in a direction, after a delay damages targets based on their maximum health, and enemies hit by the outer half are slowed by 80%, decaying over 2 seconds, also healing Camille for a percent of the damage dealt to champions only. It deals 50% less damage to monsters, which puts Camille's jungle power in a rough spot. Upgrading this ability lowers the cooldown while increasing mana cost, base damage and HP percent damage. This ability is very useful during the laning phase, enabling you to poke your opponent and sustaining. The third ability, Hook Shot. This ability has 2 casts. The first cast pulls Camille to the wall, the second cast leaps off knocking up and damaging enemy champions upon landing. Regardless of landing, the next basic attack against enemy champions within 3 seconds, grants attack speed for 5 seconds. If the first cast misses, the ability is placed on a 3-second cooldown. Also, hitting an enemy champion by the second dash reduces the cooldown by 5 seconds. This ability allows Camille to be very mobile, so she can split push safely and engage or disengage easily. Upgrading this ability lowers the cooldown while increasing base damage and attack speed. A little secret, the first cast actually has a longer range than it appears. To know the exact range use the second cast and don't move, wherever you land that's the max range for the initial spot. Of course you won't do this in a real game, this info is only to help you understand and practice its real max range. The ultimate, the Hextech Ultimatum, dashes to the enemy champion dealing not physical but magic damage based on the target's current health, creating an inescapable zone and knocking away other enemies. Hextech Ultimatum ends when Camille uses Stasis Enchant or leaves the zone, so abilities like Lee Sin or Tristana Ultimate make this ultimate a bit useless, as they can just push Camille out of the zone. That said, this ultimate is really good against mobile champions like Ezreal and Zed, since they cannot use their abilities to escape. Upgrading this ability lowers the cooldown while increasing HP % damage and zone duration. Camille can dodge any attack with this ability if timed correctly, because she becomes untargetable while leaping. Some interesting interactions you should know about. Yon cannot use his E again while being ulted. As you can see, Yon's E duration has ended, but he still cannot go back. If Zed had a shadow outside of the zone, he still can use it to reposition, but he blinks to the edge of the zone towards that shadow. If you like this guide so far, hit the like button. This really helps us to make more videos like this. You might ask, which skill to unlock and upgrade first then? So always unlock W first, and on level 2 you have the choice between E and Q. It depends on the situation and which skill is better to outtrade your opponent. Also, keep in mind sometimes you may not need your E because you cannot engage or don't need to disengage with it. So in this case, it's better to not unlock it, instead unlock Q on level 2 and on level 3 upgrade W, finally at level 4 you can unlock E. After unlocking all abilities max W, after that upgrade the E once, then max Q into E. Okay, but how does this kit make Camille the best Baron laner? Let's talk about Camille's strengths and weaknesses. So Camille's strengths. Number 1, Split Pusher Monster. In the mid to late game Camille can 1v1 almost anyone, which makes her split pushing power unstoppable. Number 2, Great Team Fighter. Only a few champions are very good at split pushing while also being very useful in team fights. With the help of her E and ultimate she can flank and isolate important targets very easily, or even trap high mobile champions like Zed, which completely makes the game unplayable for them. But like all champions, Camille isn't perfect and has some weaknesses too. The biggest weakness is that Camille is too weak to all-ins. Camille's early game is very rough, and she loses most of the all-ins early game, although her shorter trades are very good, which enables her to stay safe and farm very comfortably. Second weakness is risky abilities. These broken abilities can also be the reason you lose, if not used correctly. If you engage with E at the wrong time you are dead, because Camille's E is her only way of escaping. Also, engaging with ultimate into 5 enemies without good follow from your allies is a very bad idea. This is what differentiates a good Camille player from a bad one. Now before getting into the real combos, let me tell you how Camille mains make their combos so smooth. Animation cancelling is the secret. Let me show you how. The first ability, both casts, can be animated cancelled using stasis. To do this animation, cast the first ability and immediately use stasis. This also works with Flash and W using the same technique. Note this technique doesn't work with normal auto attacks. To animation cancel the second ability you can also use both Flash and stasis just like the first ability, and add to that, the ultimate. Just keep in mind, if you want to use the ultimate immediately after the W and hit the target with the outer circle to slow him and heal up. Make sure that the target is right at the edge of it. The closer you are, the slower you have to cast the ultimate. This is not all, you can also use this ability while using the hook shot. The third ability is a bit different. You cannot use the ultimate while being attached to the wall, but you can use it before the hook reaches the wall, which of course cancels the hook shot. Also, flashing while being attached to the wall, meaning during the first cast or in between casts, cancels the ability. But flashing before the hook attaches to the wall does not. And flashing during the second cast actually extends the dash range or repositions it. Unlike Flash, stasis does not cancel the first cast. Instead, the hook shot keeps pulling Camille to the wall, and when stasis is used during the second cast Camille still dashes and stuns the enemy. Also, after casting the hook shot, you're actually able to hit one auto or first ability before dashing to the wall. To pull this off, cast E then auto attack or first ability immediately. You can even add Flash to the combo. This combo is really useful to last hit a target and escape immediately. And what makes this combo even more useful is you can use it to steal objectives if you're the jungler, using a combination of smite and the second cast of the first ability, but this is really hard to pull off in a real game. So here's an easier way to do it. Instead of the second cast of the first ability, use W. So the combo becomes W, E, Flash. Alright, let's talk about the good stuff now. Combos. These are the most important combos you need to know about. Go to combo. Auto attack, Q, W, Q. This is the go-to combo for Camille in the laning phase, especially when her passive is ready, which makes the enemy unable to trade back. Another variation of this combo if your opponent is playing extra safe, is Q on a minion, W, Q. Q first on the minion provides an extra movement speed which allows you to close the gap between your opponent. Poke combo when ahead. Q on a minion, E, W, second E, Q. This combo is really effective when your opponent is behind and playing safe, so he can't really stay far enough to avoid this combo or punish you when the hook shot is on cooldown. Close range all-in combo. Auto attack, Q, W, E, second E, Q. But be careful when using this combo, there's no going back, because Camille's only escape tool is the hook shot, so make sure you're confident that you can kill your opponent. Full all-in combo. E, W, second E, auto attack, Q, R, auto attack, Q. Only use this combo when you are sure your team can follow or you can handle things on your own, because after using everything to go in, there will be no way of going back. We won't want to bore you with a trillion Camille combo, so these should be enough for you to know your way around. Unless it's not, then let us know in the comments. If you find this content helpful, consider subscribing and hit the bell icon, so you don't miss our upcoming guides like this one. Okay, now you know everything about Camille, but what summoners, runes, and items should you get? Note, the following recommendations are for patch 4.2a, so if you are watching this on a later patch, things might be very different. For the summoners, you should always take Flash and Ignite. You can also consider taking Barrier or Exhaust against certain matchups like Jace and Jax, but personally, I always take Ignite. Regarding runes, you got 3 keystone options. Fleet Footwork against matchups you struggle against during the laning phase. Grasp of the Undying against melee champions, because you can proc the Grasp against them very easily. And finally, Conqueror, which is my go-to rune these days, regardless of the matchup, as it's much more useful in team fights because of the extra damage and the Omni Vamp. For the Domination tree, personally, I always use Triumph, but you can also use Giant Slayer if the enemies have a lot of health. For the Resolve tree, Bone Plating is a must against Allin's champions like Riven and Renekton, and Second Wind against poke champions like Jace and Fiora, or if you are playing with Conqueror. For the Inspiration tree, always use Demolish, although if you are struggling in the laning phase you can take Sweet Tooth. Alright, now, which item should you get? This can be very situational, especially for Camille. You can almost build whatever you want in each game, but there is a specific way to do it. Let me explain. So the first item, it's either gonna be Divine Sunderer or Trinity Force. Divine Sunderer against health stack targets, like champions with 3,500 health points or more. Trinity Force against squishy targets, and let me be clear, by targets I don't mean your lane opponent, instead, targets that you're gonna focus on in team fights, unless you're going to split push most of the game. So now, if your choice was Trinity Force, for the second item you want to get Death Stance, because it's the only item that has these 3 stats together. But what if you choose Divine Sunderer? In this case, you want to get Blade of the Ruined King to compensate for the lack of the attack speed in the Divine Sunderer, and Death Dance for more ability haste. After buying one of the core items options, you have a lot of other options to choose from. Let's go through them all really quickly for you to figure out the best build for every specific game. Sterix Gauge generally is the best item after the core items, providing a lot of attack damage and health, also a shield that prevents getting one-shot ed. Hullbreaker is good when you're planning to split push or to counter the enemy split pushing power, in that case maybe even get it before the second core item. Of course, don't forget about anti-heal items. Moral Reminder is the damage option and Thornmail is the defensive option, so buy the one that fits your needs more in the game. Also, if you are laning against a high sustain champion like Fiora, you should get the mid-tier component Bramble Vest or Executioner's Calling even before any core items. Amaranth Twinguard is the best defensive item against both AP and AD champions. Against a lot of AP champions, don't forget to replace Death Stance with one of these items. For damage options, Wit's End is really good providing attack speed and healing, and Mauve Malmortius provides attack damage and shield. Just keep in mind this item Lifeline passive doesn't work with Sterix Gauge. For a defensive option, you got 2 choices, Force of Nature, which is the best defensive item against AP champions, and Spirit Visage, which pairs really well with the Blade of the Ruined King, and Wit's End, because it increases all healing. Lastly, there is a couple of armor items that aren't useful in most games, but maybe they are what you need. Randuin's Omen heals you but not by a lot, when attacking after being critically struck. And Guardian Angel gives you a second life. For boots, either Tenacity Boots against CC champions or Armor Boots. For enchantments, you have the option between Meteor, which deals a lot of damage especially early on in the game, and Quicksilver removes all CC, and of course teleport. Keep in mind it's not always a necessity to buy an enchant, most of the time on Camille it's better to save the money and get a full item instead. And if you don't want to think about all these items choices, here's a general build for both core items options that work for most games. Also let us know in the comments if you guys want an in-depth guide explaining each item. Now you know all about Camille, but is it always good to pick her? Definitely yes, there's no argument that Camille is the best Baron laner right now in patch 4.2a, but Jax and Gwen can make the laning phase a lot more difficult for Camille. That said, if you're really good with Camille, that won't stop you from carrying the game. In the jungle, she is still pretty OP because of her ganking power, but she clears jungle camps really slowly, which gives a window for the enemy jungle to be much more active. Also, if you're a mid laner and your team already has a lot of AP champions, consider picking Camille. She has a solid laning phase and insane roaming potential. If you are curious about how you should play the laning phase, or mid to late game, check out our playlist in the description for full Camille gameplays, including Camille top, jungle, and even in mid. Alright, let's finish this guide with some professional tips and tricks that will help you to play Camille even better. Most of the time you would want to pass the time waiting for the second Q, but why? Because after the first Q only hitting auto attacks waiting for the second Q to charge is basically doing nothing and just watching the enemy throwing everything on you. So you can pass the time by casting any other ability during this time, or hitting the first Q on a minion and then engaging. Camille's cooldowns in the early game are really long, so you should really be careful using your abilities and pay attention to your cooldowns all the time. Not using the W at the right time can be devastating in the laning phase. And after wasting your hookshot, you will definitely get punished for it and probably die, so imagine yourself playing Ezreal, never use E for other than disengaging. If you don't see a way to win your team a team fight, don't waste your time and go split push. No one on his own would be able to stop you from destroying the base anyway. In a team fight in most cases, you want to look to ulti the carry and isolate him, and by the carry, I don't necessarily mean the ADC. No, this can actually be the annoying enchanter who keeps healing and shielding everyone, or those very hard to catch mobile champions like Zed and Kassadin, or Olaf that keeps running your team down. Bottom line is whoever makes the fight harder to win, that should be your focus. Finally, the most important tip, check out this explained Camille gameplay which will definitely help you to even learn more about how to play Camille, or watch this insane Camille gameplay to see her full carry potential. If this guide was helpful to you, hit the like button so you can help us too, and subscribe, so you don't miss our upcoming guides like this one. Thanks for watching, hope to see you at the next one, bye.